The Joe Rogan Experience.
And hopefully we'll be able to use each one like 100 times at least.
Now, is there any innovation or any breakthroughs in fuel, in the type of propulsion systems that you need? I mean, conceivably, is there ever going to be a time where we have like a Star Wars X fighter that can just go shoot off onto its own?
You know, there's potential for more advanced, more efficient thrust engines, and probably one of the most promising ones in the near term is actually a nuclear engine, a nuclear thermal rocket, where you, instead of using combustion to propel hot gases out the back of your nozzle, you actually use a nuclear reactor, and you take hydrogen, you flow it over that, you heat it up like super hot, and shoot it out the back without lighting it on fire. And if you do that, you can actually get much more thrust with much less mass of fuel, like a smaller fuel tank, but more thrust over time. So that's one possible way to go.
So it's conceivable that one day there could be a standalone unit that doesn't need thrusters that eject.
Oh, it still would look like a regular rocket because the back of the nozzle would still have like fire coming out the back, but it would just be superheated. Instead of lighting it on fire to heat it up, you would there you go.
There we go here. Nuclear propulsion, NTP.
Yeah. Nuclear
thermal propulsion. So the top one is a traditional and the second one's the nuclear one? Wow.
Yeah, so right, so there it is. That's the hydrogen coming in and flowing over the reactor. Instead of having liquid oxygen and liquid hydrogen, then all you need is the liquid hydrogen.
Wow.
So that's one way, but in the short term, the advance you're seeing there with that Starhopper is that it's still a traditional chemical propulsion rocket, so it's got fuel and oxidizer, which is liquid oxygen. Because there's no oxygen up there to have fire, you need the pyramid, right? So you need the oxygen and the fuel and the spark. And you have to bring your own oxygen if you're in space because you can't use you don't have the atmosphere anymore. So you carry liquid oxygen and some fuel. And in the Falcon 9, for example, it's basically kerosene. It's rocket fuel, but it's RP1, but it's basically kerosene mixed with liquid oxygen. The engine you saw in that Starhopper is advanced and different because what it still uses liquid oxygen, but instead of kerosene, it uses liquid methane. And it's actually not as efficient quite. It doesn't have quite the specific impulse, which is a measure of efficiency. It doesn't have that quite as good as hydrogen. It's better than kerosene, but not quite as good as hydrogen. But here's the thing. You can make it on Mars. And that's why Elon's building that engine. Because you can go to Mars and you don't have to bring your gas to come home.
Oh, so that was the big knock on going to Mars for the longest time, was that you'd never be able to return.
You have to wait 2 years for the trajectory for the planets to come back around, so you have a window to come home. So you do have to stay a while. But the beautiful thing is if you can go someplace and gas up again, fill up your tank without having to bring all the gas with you, that's huge, right? You can carry so much more that way. And that's with the carbon dioxide that's in the Martian atmosphere and the water that's in the ice that's on the surface of Mars, you can have a reaction, a process that allows you to take those two things and make liquid methane. And you could have a tank of that ready to go and all done robotically. You could get the telemetry back saying, we got the gas, and then you go.
Now, how much are things going to accelerate now that you have all these different companies competing against each other?
That's what's beautiful is like the pace of technological change is like really going exponential again, just kind of like it was during Apollo. So we're back onto that really rapid, that fast track. We kind of fell off of that for a little while. And the nice thing about, people ask me like, what's the biggest difference between working at SpaceX and working at NASA? And I would say it's decision speed, because we'll make up our mind quickly. Now, the reason we can do that is we got a tremendous amount of agility, because sometimes when you make up your mind quickly, you make the wrong decision, right?
Yeah.
But if you hurry up and figure out that you made the wrong decision and you have the agility to then say, okay, that was not right, let's try something else, then it works. At NASA, we had all these contractors and suppliers and a very cumbersome kind of system that we took a long time to make sure we made the right decision, because changing things was prohibitively costly. But SpaceX doesn't have to worry about that.
Oh. Now, what is the difference between the way SpaceX is handling it? You said Boeing has something. What did they call it again?
So NASA has this commercial crew program, and they selected two commercial companies to partner with, SpaceX and Boeing. And so Boeing is using an older rocket that's been around a long time called the Atlas V. And they built a capsule to go on top of that called the Starliner.
And so this is strictly for commercial flights.
Well, it's the anchor tenant, if you will. The core customer is still NASA, because NASA is going to use both of these rockets to replace the space shuttle, and we won't have to beg the Russians for rides anymore.
Let me see what the Boeing one looks like. What's the name of it again?
Starliner. Or it used to be called the CST-100.
Let me see what this sucker looks like.
We used to call it the POS-100 because we're competing,
Really?
but but it's a good vehicle.
Okay, so it's kind of similar in its design, a little bit.
It's
in the way it looks. Wow, it looks pretty dope.
Yeah. One key difference is it lands. We splash down in the water, and this one lands on land with those airbags. So
Oh wow! Fuck that.
yeah.
What if those bags don't work? So is it fill up like the way they use rovers on Mars, where it's surrounded by these gigantic airbags and it bounces when it hits the ground?
It doesn't bounce because that's not good for people. Robots don't mind. But if you bounce like that, you're going to be really upset. So it just hits and kind of like airbags that deploy in a car, they deflate and then you're done.
And so this is on the same sort of timeline as the SpaceX ship?
Yeah, I think I think SpaceX is really ready to go like in March, like very soon. But I think we're going to wait a little longer because they're talking about extending the mission for Bob and Doug and keeping them on the space station. So they need more training.
Sorry, Bob and Doug.
Yeah. Well, they get to hang out in space for a little while. I don't feel too bad for them.
And their equipment is keeping them from losing all the bone density and muscle and everything like that.
Yeah, they'll be fine.
Now, when does Elon go to space?
Oh, wow.
I mean, how well do you have to have the system working before you put the boss in the capsule and shoot him off into the heavens?
He's got a lot of work to do here, so I don't think he's going anytime soon. But he does eventually, when we get this up and running, he does eventually want to go. He talks about he wants to die on Mars, just not on impact.
Boy.
You know that joke he gives.
Yeah.
So that's he's serious about that.
He really does want to die on Mars. Like if he's
Yeah,
really old.
He wants to go and live the rest of his days as part of a permanent Martian colony.
Oh, Elon, I got to talk to you about this.
But he's not going until
Has he always thought that way?
Yeah.
That's always been the plan?
That's always been the plan.
Maybe we can get him high again. See if he reconsiders. Seems like a terrible idea.
Well, he's going to wait. He's not going to be the first one. He's going to wait until we have like pizza up there and some cappuccino and like a decent hotel.